old man generation with my white beard has lived through a whole bunch of firsts. The world's a crazy place. We were alive when the first Terminator and Ghostbusters movies came out, the first Star Wars, the internet, and the first pocket cell phones. We saw the birth of Nintendo, of Mario, of Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, of dial-up modems and the first Doom video game. And we saw the first adaptation of those games turned into movies. Results may vary. Today's microgenre is the very first generation of video game movie adaptations. It's just the live-action 90s video game movies. There's 6 of them. Now, I think I'm going to look at each film and compare it to its source material and see how it stands up. Some games will need more explanation than others. Super Mario Bros. 1993. There was just a release for a pretty damn perfect Mario Bros. Movies in theaters just last year in 2023. It was pretty great, and it got me to reflect on just how wretched and misguided the first Mario Bros. Movie was. And I say that with love, okay? Now, it's not fair to compare an animated movie to a live-action movie, especially for something like Mario Brothers, where the entire concept is pretty nonsensical and random, but I do think it's fair to look at the games they were intending to adapt to the big screen, so let's take a look at a little of what we're dealing with in 1993. At this point, we were up to 3 Mario games. They're side-scrolling platformers where our little Italian plumber eats magic mushrooms to give him power, stomps on turtles and other living evil mushrooms, punches bricks, puts a raccoon suit on so that he can fly and rescue a princess from a big Godzilla-esque baddie with a turtle shell on his back. There really isn't a story at this point beyond princess rescuing, but after 3 best-selling games, we do have an aesthetic that we can go off of. Now, let's try and figure out what went wrong. Okay. So the story. So the Plumber brothers discover a portal to an alternate reality Earth where dinosaurs evolved into the main species even though they look like us, and the King Koopa wants to merge our worlds or invade or whatever. There's a Princess Daisy and a Mushroom Kingdom, sort of. It's more of a fungal kingdom, but yeah, you can see kind of what a mess this is. Now, to be fair, in 1993, there was hardly the computer power that could handle what a Mario movie would need, so I think it is reasonable that this would be some mutation of the original source material and expedited by investors and studios that were desperate to cash in. Mario as a franchise was not that old, and only a few games worth to pull from. Let's look at some casting. Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo are the brothers. That's alright. Samantha Mathis is Daisy. That's cool. Mathis you might remember from Christian Slater's Pump Up the Volume and Christian Slater's Broken Arrow. Okay, so that's not a bad start, but now things start to get a little strange, like King Koopa Dennis Hopper, who's always playing a human, playing a character that had never been human.
What single-cell organism did you evolve from?
Tyrannosaurus Rex, the Lizard King, thank you very much.
You know what I mean? Like, the same goes for the Goombas or the Koopa Troopers. I think if we compare the two...
Goomba!
Yep.
Walk tall,
Twinsies.
be proud. Go Goomba!
The Big Bertha the fish. Yeah.
Come and get it, big boy.
The guys do get jump boots to mimic the gameplay of the platformer, I guess. There's a Yoshi, I suppose. It's incredibly misguided. Still, the weird movie tends to become the cult movie, and while even at 13 I thought it was a swing and a miss, there's an audience that loves this abomination, and now that we have a near-perfect CG animated movie, this oddity is even more charming in my opinion. 1994, Double Dragon. Now, Mario has a decent claim to be the greatest platformer of all time. Not just how early it arrived on the scene for video games, but also how relevant it stayed and how many sequels it spawned. Our second entry has claimed to be one of the best beat-em-up games ever. It too arrived early on in 1987, but just hasn't had the staying power with far fewer sequels and a much smaller footprint in pop culture these days. Still, Double Dragon was a big deal, and was the archetypical beat-em-up genre game for a generation. A beat-em-up game is a side-scrolling fighting game where 1 or 2 people fight endless waves of bad guys, usually beat by mashing your punching buttons. Often you could pick up weapons, maybe have some kind of jump attack or special powers. Games that followed this formula were Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Golden Axe, Streets of Rage, and Battletoads. Double Dragon even has a crossover game with Battletoads. Now, Double Dragon was all about those darn 80s street fights and gangs that were everywhere. Our heroes, Billy Lee and Jimmy Lee, are fighting their way through the Black Warriors gang members to get back Billy's girlfriend, Marion. The enemies in the game are all punks and muscle men, and the world is a post-apocalyptic landscape. Influences cited are Bruce Lee, Mad Max, and Fist of the North Star, and that all tracks. Now the movie. It takes place after the big quake in 2007, always charming in movies when you've already outlived their dark future, although sad when it still looks like we're marching down to the same fate. For an example, look at Andy Dick's weather report.
Black rain. All the smog fans in New Angeles won't blow this away, so if you have a smog fan, stay near it. And if you don't, get a job.
The main problem with the movie is the tone. It's clear the director or studio wanted a lighthearted movie to appeal to the kids who played the video games, but cutting the teeth from a movie that's supposed to be about street gang violence is gonna be an issue. Plus, I don't think the original game had a magical medallion or supernatural powers, so that's an invention of the movie.
Oh, shit. You said it.
There's a lot of humor here, it's just all campy cheese, but that's a good part of why the movie still has fans who love it. I mean, that extra campy cheese. Today's cheese movie is tomorrow's cult classic too, just like the Weird movie.
We don't really have to wear these, do we? Oh man, these are great. Can't buy suits like this off the rack. Of course, I don't have to wear the blue one.
What's wrong with the blue one?
So it doesn't matter that they don't look like brothers or that you can't take it seriously. Today, that's great, and when it came out, not so much.
Hey, we know these guys. It's the Lee brothers, Ugg and Home.
Paul Dini, by the way, is also a writer on the script, and you can see maybe some of the comic book influence, but it's one of those projects where rewrite after rewrite muddles up any sense of what you can credit or criticize about the work. This movie has too many cooks in the kitchen, but at a final glance, I would say Double Dragon is like a kung fu RoboCop toned down to suit a 10-year-old audience. That has the social commentary and biting satire. It takes place in a near-future post-apocalyptic cynical world where corruption has taken over, but instead of an ultra-violent robot Frankenstein police officer, it's two kung fu brothers making bad jokes. 1994 again with Street Fighter. Another genre of video games that rose to prominence in the 90s is the fighting game, and the title for King of the Ring goes to either Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, and both get feature film adaptations in the 90s. Let's do Street Fighter first, because it came out first. Most Street Fighter stories tend to focus on Ryu primarily. This is more of an ensemble piece where there are several leads with stories that all don't quite fit together so well. And interestingly, because Van Damme is in it as its biggest star, that shifts the focus to the Guile character who represents America in the game and the Allied nations in the movie. This is arguably the peak of Jean-Claude Van Damme's career. If you drew a line through Street Fighter on Van Damme's filmography, you'd find most of his commercial success and rise on the before side, and his career decline begin immediately afterwards. Street Fighter is still the most he's ever been paid for a role. $8 million is the reporting I saw online. I don't want to make this video on Van Damme's career, but before Street Fighter you have Universal Soldier, Kickboxer, Bloodsport, Double Impact, and Hard Target, and after it, we got The Quest. Yeah, I mean, I'm just being a dick. I like The Quest. And to be fair, Momentum gave us a Time Cop and Nowhere to Run. I like his late 90s output personally, but you still can see the decline. But we're looking at Street Fighter, the peak. The story of Street Fighter, the movie, is almost non-existent. And what I mean by that is that Guile and Bison already know each other, and the conflict is raging when we start the movie. This is really like their last battle, and everybody else is orbiting that situation. Ryu and Ken are black market hustlers trying to make a buck. Sagat is running underground fights. E. Honda is the camera guy for Chun-Li, who's a reporter reporting on the conflict. Now, I know you'll say that she's actually undercover to get revenge for the death of her father by killing Bison, but the truth is, aside from one monologue, you don't see any of that. This is just a cornball circus as a naked excuse to get all these eclectic individuals to fight each other. So let's take a look at the casting. Street Fighter II and its various incarnations had produced 16 playable characters by the time the movie was being made. The original 8 characters, Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li, Guile, E. Honda, Blanca, Dalsim, and Zangief. There are 4 boss characters who become playable in the Champion version, Balrog, Vega, Sagat, and M. Bison, and 4 brand new characters, Fei Long, DJ, Cammy, and T-Hawk. Rather than try to explain my way through Kylie Minogue playing Cammy or Raul Julia being M. Bison, instead, why don't I play a little mashup of the video game characters next to the movie versions of themselves, also as video game characters. See, there was this arcade version of Street Fighter reskinned with the actor's likeness, who I believe did get their bodies scanned in. It's different. The thing is, the movie is super corny. The Shadaloo warriors can't be taken seriously, everything is tongue-in-cheek, it all looks cheap, but probably wasn't. The problem to overcome is the silly cartoonish style of the game. Look at how Guile in the game walks. The broad swath of disjointed style from the international fighters is hardly cohesive, but it works within the world of the video game. Fans were all much happier with the animated Street Fighter movies, and to be fair to Van Damme's mess here, it's not like anybody has done a better live-action Street Fighter movie since, and it's been a couple decades now. Mortal Kombat 1995. Now, only a year after the release of Street Fighter had everybody scratching their heads, Mortal Kombat was released, and it was... I mean, it still is one of the best video game adaptations of all time. That sounds epic because of the sound effects, but it's absolutely true. Street Fighter very much felt like it was made by a studio who saw dollar signs but didn't care what the product was. Like Mario Brothers, like the second Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie, Secret of the Ooze. Mortal Kombat, on the other hand, looked like it was made by a fan. And that was true. I mean, this wasn't going to be a Secret of the Ooze. This was going to be dark like the first Turtles movie. Paul W.S. Anderson really smoldered in the first leg of his filmography. Mortal Kombat, Soldier, Event Horizon, and Resident Evil, which I would cover in a video about the second generation of live-action video game adaptations. If you want that, you should leave a comment. The aesthetics of the characters all gel much easier than Street Fighter, and the entire tone of the game, taking itself much more seriously, needed that same treatment for the movie, and that's exactly what we got. I included Mortal Kombat in another microgenre episode of movies that borrow their plot from Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon, and that added structure is probably a great framework to build off of, and simultaneously suited to the mythology set up in the game without being detracting or distracting for fans watching. In retrospect, and even in the moment, everybody could roll their eyes at Frenchman Christopher Lambert playing the God of Thunder Raiden.
That's so much simpler.
Lord Raiden.
But most everybody else was pitch-perfect casting. The movie is still an easy watch today and still stands as the best Mortal Kombat movie live action has had to offer in 30 years since. And speaking of which, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, 1997. Now, while the first Mortal Kombat movie focused mostly on the characters from the first game, the second movie tries to incorporate characters from the second and third Kombat video games, giving us an understandably crowded roster. Apparently it got a limited theatrical release, but I missed that entirely and caught it on video. It's a mess. Really just biting off more than it can chew, hampered by budget restrictions and recasting a few main characters, but I like a failure that dares to take some big swings, and Annihilation does that for sure. Let's take a look at the games, plural, that these characters are coming from. Mortal Kombat 2 came out in 1993, and Mortal Kombat 3 came out in 1995. By the time Annihilation comes out in 97, they wanted to incorporate the last two games as the fourth game was already coming out. They ended up mostly following the basic idea for the third game. As best I understand it, Shao Kahn doesn't care that he lost the tournament in the first movie and decides there will be no peaceful transferal of power. Because he's the bad guy, right? Anyway, he decides to merge Outworld and Earthrealm. I don't know why. And so it's immediately a post-apocalyptic landscape, and Liu Kang needs to find his animality in order to win this time. Raiden, meanwhile, recast as Dexter's dad, James Remar, gives up his godhood. That's another white guy. Jax gets his robot arms and hangs out with Sonya, who's recast from the first movie as well. Johnny Cage is killed, spoilers, just like in the game, but the story is a vague hodgepodge of fight scenes without a clear objective. Without Enter the Dragon, it just kind of flounders. And then we have all these new characters crammed into the movie, and without a coherent plot to get in the way, we can really stack up scenes with all these new characters from the game, like Nightwolf and Jade and Cyrax, and all these new interchangeable villains, none of whom even get a backstory. But the main problem, not really solved to any satisfying degree, nor do I think that the filmmakers really cared, comes at 3 minutes in when Liu Kang says, "Hey, I thought we won the last movie and closed the door."
I thought our victory in Mortal Kombat closed those portals.
What closes can also open again.
Oh, it's gonna be like that. Okay, consequences mean nothing now. Great. The sequel was fast-tracked, but also either hampered by both a much larger scope of film coupled with a much smaller budget. But if you can look past that, the project was an ambitious one and still didn't really stray from the games all that much. 1999, Wing Commander. Oh yeah, here we go. Could there be a more perfect movie to end this list with? I think not. It has all the failures. Just kidding, but not really kidding. Okay, the original game series is a flight simulator with spaceships. It's mainly a POV of the cockpit, and you're deployed on various types of missions in your Rapier and get into dogfights with enemy combatants called the Kilrathi. I never played the games, but my understanding is that they were something like X-Wing or TIE Fighter, and I did play those. There's also a story which we get in video segments, which was pretty new at the time. I remember seeing demos playing in the mall in front of Radio Shack or some store, and there was Mark Hamill in this video game.
Excuse me, sir. Did you say the victory?
Is there something wrong with your hearing, Colonel?
No, sir. It's just that
Later games also had John Rhys Davies.
May they rest in peace.
Peace. Have we ever known anything like that, Paladin?
Not for a long time, laddie.
Okay, now, the movie. I mean, we can't do a POV for the entire movie. I mean, we could, but it's super gimmicky and might be tiresome. But I don't think anybody was expecting that either. But nobody seems to like the final product. Not the director Chris Roberts, who, by the way, is the creator of the game, so that's a thing. Freddie Prinze Jr. has gone on record to say he can't stand it, that he can't watch a single scene. Critics didn't like it, audiences did not care for it. So why? Well, for fans of the games, maybe they wanted John Rhys Davies and Mark Hamill to show up, and they do not. Though, to be fair, characters across the games that were out at the time already changed or were redesigned, so this shouldn't have been a deal breaker. Maybe they didn't want the ships to look totally different than they do in the game. I mean, that's the whole game, right? Flying these ships, but not these ships. Imagine somebody wanting to make a video game for Star Wars, but the X-Wings look like giant dildos. And then you'd be like, what? Huh? Now, the reason for the new ship designs is that Old English electric lighting plane carcasses were available during the production or the pre-production, and that had to be much more affordable than manufacturing specific designs from scratch. English electric lighting sounds like a store you'd go to buy a lamp. Still, this cost-saving measure is a flop, even though these new designs befit that 1950s World War II movie aesthetic the film portrays, but we'll get into that in a minute. First, let me give you my main reason the movie didn't resonate with fans. It's just really, 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 really dumb. Now I'm going to show you right here how dumb it is. Spoilers. As if that was possible. There's a scene where Matthew Lillard from Scream and Scooby-Doo and Hackers is hot dogging in this ship that doesn't look like the game at all, and he's playing chicken with a baddie like this.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad for a woman. But watch how man handles this.
And then Rosie gets hit like this.
No!
no, Rosie! But it's too late, and they try to land her. But she doesn't make it. Okay, now, Matthew Lillard knows he screwed up. Saffron Burrows from Deep Blue Sea is his commanding officer, and she's about to blow his brains out right there on the deck.
She's the CI, and I can...
And even Matthew Lillard is like,
It's okay.
but then Freddie Prinze Jr., I know what you did last summer in Scooby-Doo, is the voice of reason.
Do not do this. It was a stupid accident. He has to live with it.
So then we cut to like a half hour later in the movie and maybe 5 minutes later for us, the audience. Freddie Prinze Jr., she's all that, comes at her like, this dude did nothing wrong and it's time to let it go.
His confidence is shot. And he's questioning every move he made. He can't go back up there like this. And right now, I think we need all the pilots we can get.
I'll think about it.
He's a good guy, Angel.
Yeah, it's not like he just murdered your friend or anything. And not over something totally frivolous and stupid as hot dogging. Because that's what he needs to do. He needs to get back into a ship right away. No time to reflect. So yeah, it's bad. But let's discuss what's good, because I like bad movies and I like this one. Let's start with the cast. Not Freddie and Saffron and Matthew Lillard. I'm talking about Checky Cario, David Warner, David Suchet, and Jürgen Prochnow. I mean, damn, those are some heavy hitters. And the score is pretty great. That main theme does get stuck in your head after the movie. I'm whistling it around everywhere. So, high whistle factor. I feel as though this movie wanted to be Starship Troopers but didn't understand satire, which is ironic given the amount of goons that think Starship Troopers is great without having any understanding of the politics or the message it was trying to convey. The same people who didn't understand Fight Club. But it makes sense. The movie gets criticized for its use of tropes and cliches, which is fair, but the only reason it doesn't work is because there's no other level of satire or some twist to make it fresh. Instead, Wing Commander reads like an old 1950s war movie, but just in space. They even steal this scene from Empire Strikes Back, which itself is an homage to a submarine movies where they're hiding and enemy ships are dropping charges.
They've spotted us. No. We're in a dense radiation belt. If they can't see or hear, they won't find us. They're nuking every crater. Methodical bastards.
I mean, how many times have we seen this scene? And most of the scenes are based on these flying aces, their romances, intercepting secret messages, and yes, the computer effects aren't really there either for their budget. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's something that could be forgiven if it weren't for the other less good parts. So that's it. We're at the end of our list of first-generation video game movies. If I forgot any somehow, you feel free to put them in the comments below. If you'd like a sequel that would cover the next decade, the second generation of video game movies, feel free to put that in the comments down below. Hit the like button, hit the comment things wherever the subscribes, wherever they are, and maybe there are videos here that are suggesting another thing, or go watch a playlist. I got a whole bunch of different interesting videos there for you to watch if you want to watch a video. I'll see you next week.